The Memoirs of a World War II Veteran. I didn't want to go to the front, I confess, without shame. I, Ilya Grigorievich Sokolov, was born in 1925. By 1943, few people volunteered for the front line. Everyone understood what was waiting there. I remember that March day when the summons came. I went to the military enlistment office straight from the factory in an oiled uniform. I was a turner. And in the morning, I was on my way to the reserve regiment in Chebarkul. The train stopped in the middle of the forest. There were pine trees and knee-deep snow all around. A lame petty officer met us, built us up and led us somewhere in the thicket. We stomped for 4 kilometers until we saw smokes rising as if from under the ground. The dugouts met us with their gloomy interior. Huge, each of them could accommodate a whole marching company. 250 men, 2-tiered bunks made of rough boards, stretched along the walls. And at the end, a lonely stove. Comfort was out of the question. No mattresses, no blankets, no pillows. We slept on homemade mats made of birch branches. 3 months in this underground world became a real test. Hunger gnawed at us from within. The food was so meager that people literally melted before our eyes. The locals could not stand it and ran home from this agonizing hunger. When I finally got to the front, I was assigned to the chemical platoon of the 1322nd Rifle Regiment of the 413th Rifle Division. There, we were trained to put smoke screens and the basics of chemical defense. In the chemical platoon, I quickly realized that our work is much more diverse than one might think. Of course, the main task is chemical protection, but in practice, we were also sanitarians, and a funeral team, and logisticians, and even laborers. Also, a rifle reserve for emergencies, though that never happened in my couple months. We didn't have flamethrowers, a luxury of army companies. Our main weapon was smoke bombs, and imagine, you crawl to the enemy 250 to 300 meters. You place the bombs along the line of future attack, set them on fire, and then it starts. The whole world seems to come crashing down on you. Mortars are howling, bullets are whistling, the enemy is beating, sparing no ammunition, and you're in the palm of his hand. Smoke plume, drifting on the ground, gives away your position with jeweler's precision. Night is our time to save the wounded. We crawl together with a cloak tent. Every movement is a risk. You move a fighter a little and the silence is broken by his cry of pain. The Germans react instantly. The sky blooms with flares, and then a real hell of machine gun bursts and mortar salvos begins. In one of such sorties, fate caught up with me. A mine splinter cut into my leg. 3 weeks in the hospital flashed by like a dream. I returned to the regiment already in a rifle company, and from there, straight to the courses of junior lieutenants at the 50th Army. Soon I was back in my native regiment, but already as a platoon commander of the 3rd Rifle Company of the 1st Battalion. Belarus met us with brutal battles. Bobruisk grouping was especially memorable. A huge mass of surrounded Germans. War sometimes throws up such surprises that you don't know whether to laugh or cry. Once we were walking in a marching column, carrying out the order to close the ring of Bobruisk encirclement. The exact location of the enemy was unknown, but we persistently moved forward. Night caught us on the highway to Bobruisk, packed with abandoned German vehicles. Having received the command to position ourselves in the forest, we set up a guard and lay down behind the trees, each facing the road. Fatigue took its toll. Everyone fell into a deep sleep. Suddenly the night was torn by fierce firing. In the pitch darkness of the forest, a real light quake began. Everyone fired as he lay there, thinking he was aiming at the road, but someone rolled over in his sleep. When the command to cease fire sounded, the silence was broken only by the moans of the wounded. Until dawn, we lay holding our breath, wondering what had happened. With the first rays of the sun revealed a striking picture. It turns out that the company of Germans, breaking through the highway, decided to rest in the same forest. Our orders were mixed up. The Germans, realizing the absurdity of the situation, began to surrender as prisoners. In July 1944, shrapnel found my leg again. A month in the sandbat, and I returned to command the company, although there were just over 30 men left. With these brave men, we reached the end of the war. October 1944, Narev Bridgehead, and a new wound, this time in the arm. Doctors started to talk about amputation, but I, young and hot, decided, better death than disability. I signed a waiver and made it through. I managed to fight for Stettin. The city, riddled with canals, became the scene of cruel deception. The Germans threw out white flags. We were happy to see the end of the fighting, but as soon as we started the crossing, a barrage of fire fell on us. I survived by a miracle. There were, of course, cases of intimacy with local women, but I testify, lie. There was no violence. Everything happened voluntarily, though not unselfishly. Germans often sought material gain or even just food. I believe that in Germany we behaved with dignity as much as possible under war conditions. No one forced women at gunpoint, but war is always a tragedy, and it leaves deep scars on the souls of all its participants, regardless of the side of the conflict. In general, soldiers refrained from brutality against civilians. There was a case when one soldier, having learned about the death of his family at the hands of the invaders, in a fit of anger threw several grenades into the empty houses of a German town, but that was the end of it. The locals had already left their homes by that time. On May 1st, 45th, the unit reached the Baltic coast. Active hostilities stopped. We managed to capture 2 ships, one with elite wines from France, the other with a variety of provisions, including fine viands. Thanks to the ingenuity of the petty officer, the soldiers were enriched with an impressive number of trophies. The soldiers were housed in a former anti-aircraft training facility in Rostock. These impressive buildings, erected in the Kaiser's time, were characterized by a high level of comfort. The canteen was decorated with oak furniture, and food was served on porcelain dishes. For the first time in a long time, soldiers could rest at night, take off their shoes, undress, and sleep in their underwear. After months and years spent in damp trenches, such conditions seemed something incredible. The satisfied soldiers enjoyed their food and wine, appreciating every moment. They realized that their participation in the war had come to an end, and a new life lay ahead.